The ujam finishers are multi-effects units with very simple user interfaces, but they're much more than that. Number one, the idea of the finishers is to help you make music that you could never do on your own. And number two, the idea was to create something that had never existed before and could not be created with hardware. That's why the metaphor for the new finisher, Fluxx, is a lab. Nobody goes into a lab to build something that already exists. Is it a common thing for people to make FX by going, let's make something that never existed before? I think it is unusual. While people can be very creative with their virtual instruments, when it comes to making effects, I think the tendency is to look backward at hardware instruments from 50 years ago and try to recreate them. The 1176 compressor came out in 1966. I don't have any problem with things that came out in 1966. Doritos came out in 1966, and they're still tasty. The problem is that when you are making something in 1966, you're bounded by things you can do with field effect transistors and tubes and stuff like that. But when you're making something today, you're only bounded by the imagination of the people who are creating the software. I love the finishers because they're the product of people doing the best they can with the technology they have today. They begin with the question, what if, rather than how can we copy stuff that was done 50 years ago? Now, ujam is hardly the only company that's trying to break new ground with effects. But I find that a lot of the innovative effects that are offered tend to fit into a couple of categories. First, they'll take something like reverb or distortion and push it out to some insane, wild level. Or they'll do something that pulses or stutters. And if they're doing something that is a multi-effect like the finishers are, it usually has a randomizer involved. So when you're using a randomizer, you don't really know what you're going to get. You're just throwing stuff against the wall. And if you do get a nice effect, you really had nothing to do with it. The finishers are the exact opposite of random. Everything in them is curated. Each of the finishers, Neo, Voodoo, and Fluxx, have 50 multi-effects chains, which ujam calls modes. The modes have things like EQ and delays and reverb and granular synthesis, and they come together and they create a new sound. And you can pick one of those modes and make your own music out of that, tweak it with a few knobs to your taste. Ujam's idea of finisher is that you have a track, like a drum track or a vocal or guitar part, and then you add finisher to it to make it more interesting. You finish the track. And there are a lot of videos on YouTube, quite good ones, that show you how you could do exactly that. But I don't know why you really need to watch them. You can get a free demo of any of the finishers that are fully functional and work for 30 days. And my feeling is just get the demo and see if they help you for your music. It doesn't really matter if other people like them. How does it work for you? I don't use the finishers that way to finish a track. After all, the finishers began life as a component in Carbon, their synth guitar hybrid. Here's a picture of the original drawing. And they then put them on their basses, and I expect whenever they come out with a new version of the guitars, there will be finishers on them as well. So that's how I use them. I use them as part of the music I'm playing live, not as something that I wait to finish and add the finishers later. I'm just going to play around a little bit with the various finishers. I'm using as my basic sound Evolution Rock Standard, and it's so I have no effects on it. First, I'm going to show micro, which is the ujam freebie, and this isn't really much of a finisher because you have one knob. You can change the mode with the one knob, and then you can change the amount of the finisher. So it's not a multi-effect. So here's Neo, which is the first real finisher. So let's see. I'm gonna try, or maybe just. This is some kind of granular thing with a lot of reverb. And if I change, I think this changes the reverb. Let's see what happens when I bring in more of the effect. So this is a rotation effect with an auto pan. So this is a comb filter with a lot of reverb. So for me, when you're doing these sounds, you can get inspired by them. Maybe a little bit. You turn on the finisher, it changes a bit. Oh, here's Voodoo. Well, let me add a little infinity. You can always use more infinity. Never enough. Okay, there's your real guitar effect. You have to have one of them in this thing. This is a gated effect with reverse sounds. This is a big swell thing. See, like I hit the chord, nothing happens. Takes a while. This could be really good for ambient music. Again, I can mess with it. Quite a lot of almost synth-like effects coming from these things, which is, basically a very simple guitar part. Okay, this is a tape stop sound. Turn the variation down, and if I turn finisher up, well, I guess I'm finished. What I recommend is that you go to the Ujam site and download one or all of the Finisher free demos. See for yourself if they work well with the kind of music you make. And I'd love to hear what you think. Leave your comments below. Thanks for listening. This is Tiger the Frog.